Hello, everybody, and welcome to the July 30th, 2018 edition of the Ephrom Josine Show. I am your host, Ephrom Josine. Oh, God, we got quite a bit to unpack tonight. Let me crack my knuckles. Now, as many of you heard recently, and how could you not hear, basically all the corporate media outlets and every Republican outlet, or as I like to call it, sorry, I just was kind of redundant there. Published articles saying Donald Trump's economy, GDP, grew by 4.1%. Barack Obama even said that wasn't going to happen. Therefore, Donald Trump is basically great. Let's ignore the fact that's not how anything works. First off, GDP is not a good metric to gauge economic growth. For instance, say one quarter, 10 items are sold at $10, and the second quarter, 8 items are sold at $20. According to GDP, the economy just grew 60%. So right there, it's a very flawed metric. But hey, 4%, that's nothing to scoff at. And after all, as the Republican theory typically states, the better the companies do, the better the workers do. You know, the wealth is going to trickle down, but trickle-down economics doesn't exist. It's just a conspiracy by us liberals to point out the economy crashed under Reagan. I don't get it. You see, the idea, and the one that was pushed when Donald Trump proposed his $1.5 trillion tax cut last December, which also slashed the corporate tax rate from 35% to 21% and did a whole bunch of other things, was very simple. The money that is in the hands of rich corporations won't go to the corporations, instead it will go to you. And that's what they've always said since the Reagan era. However, here's what actually happened. Is Bloomberg found, quote, showing private data from PayScale's wage index swept across Twitter, or as that happened, Bloomberg made a chart about it, it shows a drop in wages in the second quarter of the year. While wages have risen by 12.9% overall since 2006, wages adjusted for inflation have fallen by 9.3%. That's from Vox right there. 9.3%. Man. Just man. And and we talk here all the time about how workers aren't getting paid enough and how that's a big problem for a lot of companies. And I'm a business owner myself. I own an Ephrom report, which you can currently find on ephromjosine.blogspot.com. I'm going to talk about tomorrow, by the way, but I am currently working to push it to its own independent URL. I'm even have some website plans to possibly fulfill that, but it'd be a little bit more of a complicated process than I personally would have liked of. Essentially, I should have thought ahead and just gone with WordPress from the start on. And in case you're wondering, by the way, because I know someone's going to argue, well, what if it's steady? Well, I noticed, remember how I said it had dropped by essentially 9.5%, or 9.3%, my bad. Well, wages versus wages in 2006, once adjusted for inflation, were, in the first quarter of 2018, minus about 7.75% of what they were in 2006, which still isn't very good. That's still very bad. But that's certainly better, and when the Trump presidency started, in the first quarter of 2018, they were at about minus 8%. Now, they did do a slight increase of about 0.25% under the current president. However, then they took this big dive in the second quarter of 2018, which is what liberals have been predicting. Essentially, the segment could just be called, "So it turns out the liberals were right again." And mind you, this is only the first quarter since the tax bill was passed. It's very possible, mind you, I could be completely wrong. The trend could reverse. And if that does happen, I'll come on the show, say I was wrong, and officially encourage my audience to vote Republican. That is never going to happen. In fact, if that does actually happen, I will also shave my head bald, give up my long, beautiful hair, and do at least 3 shows straight completely shirtless. Don't actually try that, by the way. I don't know, I'm just thinking of things I'd probably never do. What else? I'd shave my eyebrows off. That'd be too... I have no hair, like, from here up. I'd grow a beard out, though. I'd be bald with a beard. But how much do they get? Well, let's see. According to estimates from the Center of Budget Policy Priorities, the top fifth of earners got 70% of the bill's benefits, and the top 1% got 34% of the bill's benefits. That sounds very disproportional to me. But, you know, I mean, I get that if you're going to lower the tax rate, the top 1% can't get just 1% of the benefits, although that'd be ideal. But shouldn't the top 1% get no more than, like, 10% of the benefits? But yeah, the top 20% got 70% of the benefits. Man. Anyway, here's some more news. Jeff Sessions is currently fighting for your liberty over at the Department of Justice. Not your liberty to smoke a plant, though, because that needs to be stopped. No, instead he's fighting for the ability to... Well, you just can't make this up. This is from ABC. Attorney General Jeff Sessions announced Religious Liberty Task Force. Sessions says the task force will, quote, help the department fully implement our religious liberty guidance, including, quote, making sure our employees know their duties to accommodate people of faith. So here's my question, Jeff Sessions. If I get a job, and I, for instance, tell them, and mind you, this is already the law in several places, that I can't work on Fridays because it is my religion that I must watch episodes of Mystery Science Theater 3000 and not do any work on Friday. Would your religious liberty force step in favor of me or the business owner? Because the thing is, you cannot have pure freedom in both directions. You have to either have freedom of the business owner, which is what these people claim to want, while at the same time you have to have freedom of religion, which is also what these people want. Otherwise, people could just say, I refuse to work due to religious reasons. Let's read what CNN has to say about this. This is from Sarah Hillam over at CNN, as you just heard. Attorney General Jeff Sessions on Monday, that's today, announced the Department of Justice's creation of a religious liberty task force to, quote, help the department fully implement our religious guidance. In a speech at the Department of Justice's Religious Liberty Summit in Washington, why is that a thing? Sessions said the goal of the task force will be protecting religious groups from persecution. I assume, for instance, they're going to address how Muslims are, at least in theory, disproportionately targeted by the TSA. In fact, really one of the whole reasons the TSA was created was specifically to target Muslims. You can actually find politicians admitting that. This is what Jeff Sessions has to say. I cannot do an ideal Jeff Sessions voice, so I'm sorry for that, but I will try. This task force will help the department fully implement our religious liberty guidance by assuring that all Justice Department components are upholding that guidance in cases that bearing and defend the argument they make in court, the policies and regulations they adopt, and how we conduct our operations, said Sessions. Essentially, that was just gibberish. Sessions cites a dangerous movement aimed toward stripping away First Amendment right to freedom of religion as a basis for forming the new task force. Who wants to bet his reason is the Master Shop Cake case? You know, the case that we determined was wrong if you want to actually look at the history of anti-discrimination laws as far back as 1964 when we passed the Civil Rights Act. And all gays have ever said is, hey, maybe add them to that list too? But you can't do that because reasons. Here's some more of what Sessions had to say. A dangerous movement undetected by many. You people have been whining about it for 30 years. Actually, if I want to be accurate, you people have been whining about it for 200 years. It is now challenging and eroding our great tradition of religious freedom. There is no doubt this is no little matter. It must be confronted and defeated. Over 70% of the country is still Christian, moron. What are you talking about? This is not the first time Sessions promoted the idea of federal prosecution protections for religious groups. Here's some more of what the mad anti-marijuana man had to say. The Religious Liberty Task Force will continue the department's ongoing work to implement religious liberty memorandum and the implementation memorandum. I can never pronounce that word. That's been stated in the memo. The task force will also consider new invitations that will further the department's work to protect and promote religious liberty. So I'm going to have to see more how this plays out. He hasn't announced who's part of it yet, but I'm pretty sure this is a scam from the start. This basically probably only means liberty for Christians. I can't confirm that, though. Again, I need to wait to see who's on it to really be sure, but that's my gut feeling from this. Knowing the Republican Party's history, but I don't know. This is one of those cases where I kind of want to be wrong. I have actually wanted to be wrong this entire presidency, but that's not happening. I'm Ephrom, and good night.